Hey guys, good morning. Greetings in the name of Jesus Christ. Well, I promised you guys a video about Yellowstone, and here it is. But before I start, I'm currently watching earthcams.com and watching the webcam for Western Wall in Jerusalem. And there's something big going on there. They've got a big tent set up. They set it all up yesterday. And they got a bunch of other stuff going on around there. And there's a lot of rabbis walking around that thing. I mean, I'm looking at this thing, and it's almost all rabbis walking around, but there's a bunch going on. I saw a bunch of, about 10 government vehicles leave there about 30 minutes ago, 20 or 30 minutes ago. About 10 government vehicles. They were there. 3 of them were actually in the tent. I don't know how they pulled that off, but they drove out, came out and turned around, and then the rest of them followed them, and they all drove off. It's like they're pulling the sides down the tent now. I don't know what this is. I don't know if they're setting up a market or if they're setting up something for the elections that are coming up this weekend. Or, I'm sorry, Monday next week. That's the 9th. I don't know what's going on, but they're taking all the sides down now. So if you get a chance, go on earthcams.com and you can download. They have a mobile app you can download to your phone. But go on earthcams.com and look up Western Wall, and you'll see what I'm talking about. A lot of activity going on there. Anyway, what you want, Rufus? Rufus, look up. Look up. Look at him. That's my cat. He's been bugging me a lot lately. Alright, lay down. You can't have my lap at the moment. Okay, so Yellowstone. What do we know? Well, there's a lot of people putting videos out, a lot of people putting information out about what's going on at Yellowstone. There's a channel that I follow that she puts out very good detailed information, discusses what's happening there, what most of it means, and she keeps a real close eye on it. So, every couple of days or sometimes every day you get a video about Yellowstone. It's Mary Greeley News. There's a link in the description. She's really good. She talks about a lot of things going on around the world. A lot of things that nobody else covers. But Yellowstone, if you haven't been keeping up, has been, the activity has skyrocketed there. Now, the back history to Yellowstone is that about every 600,000 years, they have a major eruption there. Say every 80,000 years, there's a mini eruption, where there'll be some minor activity, a little bit of lava, stuff like that goes on there. The indicator that the USGS uses, and most of the agencies involved with Yellowstone use, to tell them, sorry, let me just do this, there we go, to tell them what's going on there is Steamboat Geyser. Whoops. And Steamboat Geyser, it sits back on the back side of Old Faithful, and it's back in the trees a little bit. You can't hardly see it. Now they have somebody that watches all those geysers, and they take down logs, and Mary's put up some of their logs, but they it'll go off a certain amount of times. Sometimes it can go 10 years and not go off. Sometimes it can go 20 years and not go off, and then sometimes it can go off 7 or 8 times in a year. Well, it went off over 30 times last year. They said they've never seen any activity of this level. Right now, at the beginning of this year, we already look to possibly double that. We're going to break records with Steamboat Geyser. Now, what does that mean? Well, the thermal heating system that's under that section right there is the magma underground heats up the water that's in these chambers, and causes you to have this reaction or have this explosion of energy coming out, because the heat and the stuff has got to go somewhere. So what they've discovered with the Yellowstone is that there's a big magma chamber that sits under it. It's a super volcano. The caldera is like 256 miles across. It's massive. They show a little tiny area, but that doesn't really give you the scope of how big this volcano is. If it was to completely blow, it would take out the entire middle part of the United States. Most of the western part of the United States. It's very, very, very big volcano. There are in the world right now, if you count earthquakes over 4.0, there are over 50 a day. If you go under 4.0, it's hundreds. A large portion of those are at Yellowstone. There's constantly having earthquakes there. They've had a building start sinking, sunk 10 inches, just like almost instantly. There's big cracks opening up. There's tons of uplift. Mary Greeley has a lot of detailed information on all this stuff. But it's the activity underground that they've been watching close. Now, there's a magma chamber under there that's huge. It said it's surprisingly big. And when all this information first started really being noted back in 2016, I think, they said that magma chamber just had a little bit of magma in there. There was nothing to worry about. But the heat was what was heating everything up above and causing the geysers to go off. And it's just pretty normal. Well, that magma chamber is now full. Over those years, especially here this last year, it's really, the magma's pushed up into this and filled this thing up. And they have spectrograms that they look at. You can see those on Mary's channel, where it shows the coloring for the heat. And when you see certain things happen on this thing, it tells you where that magma is. And it's up in that, it's all the way up in that chamber. The problem is, that's not the only magma chamber. There's another magma chamber under that feeds that one. And they've done some seismic surveys and they've been able to get a picture of what this looks like. The one under it is 5 or 6 times bigger than that one. And it stretches all the way out under California out into the Pacific. It's massive. It's like if this whole thing was to ever collapse down in on itself, you'd have the Pacific would rush in and fill all of it in. You'd have the western part of the United States would be an ocean. All the way up to, the forecasts I saw showed that if that happened, it would go all the way up to Nebraska. That's where the Pacific Ocean coastline would be. So yeah, there's a lot going on there that they've never told anybody. And the USGS is, Bill Clinton put a gag order on them in 2015 to only let out a certain type of information. Don't let out a whole bunch of information. Well, there's a lot more going on there than what they've been letting on. They're trying to stop people from finding out. In fact, last year, 20 members of the USGS quit. And it's suspected it was over warning people about what's going on. Because if you think about it, if they warn everybody that lives there, hey, you guys, this thing's getting really active, y'all might want to move. Well, you've got half the United States moving to the other half of the United States, and it'll shut our economy down. So they don't want to warn people about that. They don't want them to get into a panic and take off and going, because the only place we have to go is Mexico, Canada, or the East Coast. No matter where we go, it's going to be bad if this sucker blows up. So they're not warning people about this, and that's tragic that they aren't putting out any type of warnings, because they should be doing something, and they're not making people aware of it because of the public, the public, for their safety, and give people a choice if they want to move. With that being said, if this thing blows up very, very intensely, you're probably looking at several million people dying. It just depends on what the population rate is over there and how widespread it is. Because with a caldera that big, who knows? So they've got almost non-stop harmonic tremors going on. If you do any reading at all on volcanology or volcanism, when you have harmonic tremors or drumbeat tremors, that's a pre-indicator to an eruption. When I found Mary's channel, I started commenting on her. I said, when you see Yellowstone Lake boil, you know it's about to go off, probably within a week. There's an end of Yellowstone Lake. It's got a great big split underneath, and the floor of it has come up, because that's part of the caldera. The floor of it has risen up a lot. And it's so hot when they send sensors down there, the sensors come back melted. That's in the water. And that end of Yellowstone Lake doesn't freeze anymore because the water's so hot. And it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. So they're starting to notice that the split's coming open. This just come out a couple weeks ago, but that split down there in that lake is opening up. So there's so much uplift now that the shoreline has shifted. So the shoreline has moved over to the other side. So you got water coming out and then water going in. If you go on Google Earth and look at an aerial shot of Yellowstone, I found on the shore of Yellowstone Lake, it was the western shore. I was just scrolling along and I found a weird looking pattern on the water, and you had blue water on one side and you had water like the sun was coming up on the other side because it had reflection coming off of it. So a closer look at the shoreline, I found where you could see green trees, but under the green trees, almost like that was an overlay, you could see dead trees, a bunch of dead trees. So they're putting a overlay on there to hide what it really looks like out there. And people from there will tell you, oh, it's fine, there's nothing going on. Well, that's why they've shut down most of the park to public access. The roads are melting. Literally, the asphalt is turning back to liquid. It's so hot. Animals are running from that place. There's a lot of dead trees around there because of the helium-3 and CO2 runoffs. They had a river north of there last year that went, a large, long section of this river went, green, and there was a lot of bubbling and stuff coming out of there, and it was because of sulfur being pushed out. And that's another big indicator when your local water supplies and groundwater start going acid and going green and nasty because of sulfur. That's another big indicator you have an impending eruption. So it's being watched very closely. And Mary, the contact she has, she's able to dig in and find a lot of information that a lot of other people aren't able to put out. It's pretty surprising how close it is that nobody's heard about this. The news doesn't talk about it. They used to back in 2015, 2016. They don't say nothing now. So it's important that channels that are putting this information out, that I feel like it's a duty to share this information. What can we do? A lot of people are prepping. A lot of people over there within 200 miles of Yellowstone are putting underground bunkers in, and none of that's going to help you. You can put back some bottled water, and I've said before on other videos about prepping, you don't want to prep so much that, you know, anybody who's going to have access to this stuff is going to have a hard time moving it, because you may have to move from the area you're in. So you don't want to go crazy and put back a year's worth of food, because you can't feasibly haul that with you in a vehicle if you have to take off, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how bad things are going to be. And I'm not telling anybody to go crazy and do anything silly, but there are some precautions you can take. And what they suggest, the American Heart Association and USGS, what they suggest is you have these on hand. This is an N95, N for November, 95 dust respirator mask, and it's a very basic one. It's common, used in painting and interior, redoing houses, working in dusty environments, and they're used worldwide. This is the bare minimum that you need to filter out volcanic ash. Volcanic ash, after a large volcano blows, that ash can travel 1,000 miles and come back down. If you have respiratory issues, elderly and children are most affected by the volcanic ash. A young person might not have an immediate effect. However, when volcanic ash comes in contact with water, it literally turns into liquid concrete. 1 inch of it on your roof, get it wet, and it can collapse your roof. It's that heavy. So you don't want to breathe that in if you can possibly help it. And I want to read you some stuff here in a minute, but what they also recommend is, if there's an ash exposure, wear a full hoodie, something, you can completely cover yourself. You need to wear goggles. You don't want to get it in your eyes because it burns, and it can take your sight for a while, if not permanently. And you don't want to, you want to wear gloves and everything, and even duct tape your cuffs so you make sure ash doesn't get all of you. And at your dwelling, you'll want to take, say if you got a front porch or a back porch or something like that, or a mud room, you want to separate that off and wrap plastic around something and make a clean room. Put a shop vac in there so you can suck that ash out. If you go outside and come back in, you want to get rid of that ash before you come into your house, because it floats and it goes everywhere. So being clean is very important when it comes to this. You don't want to contaminate your living area. You want to keep that as much outside of it as you can. So you can make a makeshift clean room and seal it all off with spray foam and plastic and all that kind of stuff. That way you have a place that you can get into, get your clothes off. You can use the shop vac to suck the dust out of the air, and run a little exhaust outside. But then that way you keep the contamination level down to a bare minimum when you come into the house. Will we see this thing erupt in our lifetime? Who knows? But all the indicators are there that something is going to happen. And it's prudent for us to try to take a few precautions at least, so if something does happen, we can survive it and we can live through it. A lot of other countries right now are experiencing serious eruptions from the volcanoes in their area. Kilauea, Pompeii, there's the one in Italy. There's a bunch of volcanoes that are erupting, and people are having to deal with this. A lot of people are dying. It's not being reported. A lot of people, Mexico, where Mexico City is, at the back side of it, up on the mountain, there's a volcano. There's actually a YouTube channel that shows webcams of it, and it's erupting. It's been going off and throwing ash in the air. People in Mexico are partying. They're not realizing if it erupts, all that lava is going right down in that valley where they're at, and it's going to fill it up, and that city's going to disappear. So it's important to pay attention to what's going on and just take precautions. You don't want to say, "Oh well, if I die, I die." Well, you might not die. You might suffer for a really long time before you die. And that's not cool. So let me read you a couple of things. This is from USGS.gov, and it's protecting against ash. They have a ton of information on here, and it's pretty simple, pretty easy to deal with. Driving conditions may be poor. You're limited driving. Driving conditions may be poor following ashfall, with poor visibility and loss of traction due to slippery roads. Surface commonly reported. Avoid non-essential travel. If you must drive, drive slowly and maintain a large distance from the vehicle in front of you. Another thing to remember when you're driving is your air cleaner in your car is going to get clogged up real fast, because that engine is like a vacuum cleaner and it's pulling everything that's coming in contact with it in. So it's going to you'll have to go and buy keep a couple of those air cleaners on hand, because it'll clog up to the point your car won't run anymore, and you'll have to change that. Limit ash ingress into buildings. Keep doors and windows closed. Tape drafty windows, and place damp towels at door thresholds. The ash, it's super fine. It'll blow in through cracks and stuff. So when you go to buy some N95 masks, and we're going to go back to talk about the masks in a minute. There's some other stuff that you need to know about those. But when you buy your masks and you want to go, make sure you can buy a painter's outfit to wear to protect your body from the ash. A pair of just simple basic ski goggles, anything like that to cover your eyes. And there's full face masks you can buy too. But you want to buy some good sticky tape to tape the openings of your windows off, so ash doesn't blow in. Even with double pane windows, you're still going to have ash come in, because there's very fine cracks that are open there. And you dampen towels and put them at the bottom of the doors, so it'll help keep the ash from blowing in under the towels. It'll catch it. Do not use a wet handkerchief to protect your breathing from the ash. It does not work. USGS warns against this. Most people that deal with volcanoes and ash warn against this. It will not work. So don't think you can grab a rag, get it wet, and you're good. No, it's not going to happen, because it's too thin and the water won't catch all of it, and you'll still end up inhaling a bunch of that stuff. It's not worth taking the chance, guys, because that's a rough way to die from ash contamination in your lungs. You drown, basically, and it's painful. Reduce personal exposure. Avoid unnecessary exposure to ash and remain indoors in ashy conditions. This is particularly the case for children, the elderly, and people with existing respiratory problems. It is also advisable to avoid undue exertion when ash is in the air, since this leads to heavier breathing and draws small particles more deeply into the lungs. And you guys can go on, I'll give you the web address, you can go on there and check this out. Matter of fact, I'll put it in the description so you can read all this stuff to yourself, because I'm not going to go through every bit of it. Advice for children. Children should be advised against strenuous play or running when ash is in the air, since exertion leads to heavier breathing, drawing small particles more deeply into the lungs. Take particular care to prevent children playing in areas where ash is deep on the ground or piled up. In general, it may be preferable to keep children indoors. Everybody should stay indoors if possible when you're having this kind of issue. Personal protective equipment. We advise wearing goggles to protect the eyes, long sleeve shirts, and pants to protect the skin. And they have a little link below that statement saying it's cleanup and disposal, personal protection. There's a whole bunch of information here, tons of it. You can just scroll down the list. But what I'll do is I'll put this link for volcanic ash impacts, USGS. So you guys can go straight to this page. You can read for yourself. Don't panic. I'm not trying to start a panic or anything. Don't get excited. We could see this. We could not. It could calm right back down and go in there. But when you know what's going on at Yellowstone and you temper that information with the Ring of Fire being active, completely active for the first time in recorded history, and all the earthquakes we're having and all the volcanoes that have gone off already, it kind of tells you a story. This is one of those 2 and 2 equal 4 situations. You can see what's going on around the world, see what's going on in your own country, and go, we might have an issue here. So it's important to pay attention. It's important to get basic stuff, like just carry some of these N95 masks in your vehicle. If something happens and it blows, you're going to know. This is going to be a big earthquake. It'll shake everything. But they'll come over the radio and announce it. As soon as that ash is in the air, you got to start wearing a mask because it's going to get you. Don't think that because you're healthy that you're safe from it. This stuff will tear you up. It will. Go do your own research online about the effects of volcanic ash contamination in your lungs, and you'll see what happens. If you breathe enough of it in, it's a guaranteed death sentence. So I'm gonna give you the link to that one, and there's another one. It's the American Lung Association, and they have a page for volcanic ash, and they have tons of information on here about protecting yourself, talking about what you can do, the bare minimum stuff you need to do, all kinds. They give tons of really good information. I'll put a link for this one. It's lung.org. I'll put a link to this page in the description also, so you guys can read that. It's important to try to prevent this. It's really cheap stuff to buy. You can go get your shop vac. You can make your back porch into a section off a clean room by the back door, and do your own just to build it up just in case. It doesn't have to be nothing crazy, just enough to protect you, because the alternative is not good. But I'll put a link to this page in there. Now let's go back to the masks. I've got to get an editing program so I can show you guys this on the video. But what it says here, dust masks CEN95 or CEN100, and eye protection for each person. The 3M 8233 mask is one of the best and longest lasting masks approved for use of volcanic ash, with a time limit of use at 38 hours. You can see that's just walking around breathing, and look how quick 38 hours is all you get out of it. Now there's masks you can buy. That's a quick disposable mask. That's an easy one. Use it, toss it. It don't last forever, but you got it. It works great in emergencies. But they've got masks, like there's a Holulo Organic Vapor Full Mask. It's everything, all across here. And it's got cartridges. So you can buy the mask. It's already got the eye protection built in, and get cartridges that go on the side. And just keep extra cartridges. You just change those out when one gets clogged. And they go from $70 to $350, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. I paid $7 for those 3 masks. Super cheap, and they work, in an emergency to protect you. But there's tons of masks online that you can get. You want to look for on the website, on the USGS website. It tells you what to look for as far as certifications, because you don't want to get something cheap that's not going to work. You want to get something that's going to work. But there's tons. Old military masks work for ash, but you want to look for something that's going to help against ash. You need to double check and make sure that. But there's tons of them, and they're cheap. Cheap insurance. You spend $50, buy something that's going to work. Here's a 3M full face piece respirator, $6,000, $45. It's like that. And I know some of this stuff is backwards, guys, but I'm doing what I can with what I got. That there. Prices are good. This stuff here. So it's real basic, simple stuff. You don't have to spend a ton of money to be prepared. But it pays to protect yourself. It pays to take a few precautions and be ready just in case, because you don't want to get caught off guard with this. You don't want to, all of a sudden, whoa, where's this coming from? Why am I having to deal with this now? Because there's a lot of people over the last couple of years who, if you remember, the big tidal wave that hit, that town in Indonesia, took the whole town. Nobody was left. It took everything. The only thing that was left were the outer walls of a mosque. That's it. The whole town was gone. And they found bodies for weeks out at sea. Some people got lucky and were able to survive it, but it came right into the valley, washed right back out, took everything with it. So you don't want to assume you're okay. You don't want to assume it'll be good. We're in Texas. We're in South Texas. We're good. No, the projections show asphalt can reach all the way out here. So a little bit of prevention is going to make a big difference in your life. So I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of detail here because there are people better than me at this. But I've shown you guys some of the basic things. In the description will be the link to the USGS page, to the American Lung Association page. Both of them give you a bunch of good information that you can use that will help you if this situation goes up. And you can just make a little box and put everything in a little box. And then carry some of the paper mass in your vehicle so in case something happens while you're out. But then you have that box and put it in a closet. Then you get it out. Here's our volcano box. Start taping up windows and all that kind of stuff. You can print out the instructions so you have it there so you don't have to try to remember everything. But then you go down, when you go down in the description, I got a bunch of other links to other channels, and Mary Greeley's channel is in there. So you can go and you can look at the information she's put out about the Yellowstone volcano and things that are other things that are going on around the world. Really good channel. She's a sister in Christ. She doesn't put a bunch of religious stuff on there. It's just information about what's going on. And it's pertinent to what we're dealing with today. It's pertinent to what we're seeing as far as Bible prophecy goes. It's news that people don't talk about. So it's important that we, if we're able to get access to some of this, that we get it. Because nobody else is wanting to tell us about it. So check that stuff out. I love you guys. I pray this blesses you in some way. Be blessed in Jesus' name. And I have another video I got to put out later. And if you get a chance, go online and look up the earthcams.org and look at the Western Wall. There's a lot of activity going on there right now. And but there's webcams you can look at all of Israel. And it's actually really beautiful over there right now. So be blessed. If I don't see you guys in the next video, I will see you in the clouds.